Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video, we had discussed about Chapter 31 of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. Today, we are going to talk about Chapter 32 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand how the Criminal Procedure Code is followed and how the criminal courts work. So if you're new here, please like and subscribe to my channel so you can get the video notifications. So let's get started. So today we are going to discuss about chapter 32, which talks about execution, suspension, remission and commutation of sentences. So section 413 talks about execution of order passed under section 368. So when in a case submitted to the High Court for the confirmation of a sentence of death. So in the previous video we had already discussed and learned that a case may be transferred to the High Court for confirmation on a death sentence, and such case is transferred by the Court of Sessions. Now the Court of Session will receive the order of confirmation or other order of the High Court thereon. So when a Sessions Court submits a case before the High Court to confirm upon a death sentence, then the High Court will pass an order to that regard and send it back to the Court of Sessions. And then it shall cause such order to be carried into effect by issuing a warrant or taking such other steps as may be necessary. So the Sessions Court will work as per the order or direction of the High Court. Now section 414 talks about execution of sentence of death passed by High Court. So when a sentence of death is passed by the High Court in appeal or in revision, the Court of Sessions shall, on receiving the order of the High Court, cause the sentence to be carried into effect by issuing a warrant. So it will issue a warrant and carry out that sentence. Now section 415 talks about postponement of execution of sentence of death in case of appeal to Supreme Court. So whenever the case is appealed before the Supreme Court against the order of the High Court, then the execution will be postponed. So where a person is sentenced to death by the High Court and an appeal from its judgment lies to the Supreme Court under clause A or under subclause A or subclause B of clause 1 of article 134 of the Constitution, then the High Court shall order the execution of the sentence to be postponed until the period allowed for preferring such appeal has expired. So until the time period for which that appeal can be preferred is expired, until then no sentence will be passed or no execution will be allowed. Now if an appeal is preferred within that period, then until such appeal is disposed of. So whether the time period has expired or the appeal is disposed, until then there will be no execution. Now where a sentence of death is passed or confirmed by the High Court, the person sentenced makes an application to the High Court for the grant of a certificate under Article 132 or under subclause C of clause 1 of Article 134 of the Constitution. So where a sentence of death is passed and confirmed by the High Court, and the person who is sentenced makes an application to the High Court that you grant me a certificate under Article 132 or 134 clause 1 subclause C, then in that case the High Court shall order the execution of the sentence to be postponed until such application is disposed by the High Court, or if certificate is granted on such application until the period allowed for preferring an appeal to the Supreme Court on such certificate has expired. So until the expiration of such certificate or the time period that is allowed for preferring an appeal before the Supreme Court has expired, until then the sentence will not be carried out. Now where a sentence of death is passed or confirmed by the High Court and the High Court is satisfied that the person sentenced intends to present a petition to the Supreme Court for the grant of special leave to appeal under Article 136 of the Constitution. So what happens is that the person against whom the death sentence is passed, he may move before the Supreme Court and file a petition for granting him special leave to appeal under Article 136 of the Constitution, then in that case, the High Court shall order the execution of the sentence to be postponed for such period as it considers sufficient to enable him to present such petition. So he will be provided such proper opportunity to go for a special leave petition. Now, section 416 says that postponement of capital sentence on pregnant woman. So, if a woman sentenced to death is found to be pregnant, then the High Court shall commute the sentence to imprisonment for life. So, when she is pregnant, then her death sentence will be commuted to imprisonment for life. Now, let's move on to section 417. What does it say? It says that power to appoint place of imprisonment. So, except when otherwise provided by any law for the time being in force, the state government may direct in what place any person liable to be imprisoned or committed to custody under this code shall be confined. So, it will be the state government who will be the decisive authority to select a place as to where the person who is to be imprisoned or committed to custody shall be confined. So the place that will be used for the confinement of such person who is imprisoned or committed to custody, that will be decided by the state government, except when it is not provided by any law for the time being in force. Now, if any person liable to be imprisoned or committed to custody under this code is in confinement in a civil jail, the court or magistrate ordering the imprisonment or committal may direct that the person be removed to a criminal jail. So, whether a person is in civil jail and he needs to be moved to a criminal jail, then that order will be given by the court or magistrate who will be ordering such imprisonment or committal. Now, when a person is removed to a criminal jail under subsection 2, he shall, on being released therefrom, be sent back to the civil jail. So, once he has served the sentence in a criminal jail, then he will again be sent to the civil jail if that was his nature of sentence. Which means, say for example, he was in a civil jail and his term there was not totally served, and within that time period he has committed such an offense that he has been punished with imprisonment for a certain time in a criminal jail. So he will be moved from that civil jail to the criminal jail. He will serve his sentence in that criminal jail for that offense he has committed, and then he will be sent back to the civil jail again for serving the rest amount of period that he did not serve in the civil. So this will be the provision unless either 3 years have elapsed since he was removed from the criminal jail, in which case he shall be deemed to have been released from the civil jail under section 58 of the Civil Procedure Code. So we will discuss about it when we read the Civil Procedure Code, or section 23 of the Provincial Insolvency Act. So these acts and these sections will be applicable on him if already 3 years have been elapsed since he was removed from the criminal jail, or the court which ordered his imprisonment in the civil jail has certified to the officer in charge of the criminal jail that he is entitled to be released under section 58 of the Code of Civil Procedure or under section 23 of the Provincial Insolvency Act. So either 3 years have elapsed or the court which ordered his imprisonment in the civil jail have certified the officer in charge that he is entitled to be released. So either by the order of the court or by expiry of 3 years. These are the two exceptions that he will not be sent to a civil jail after serving his time in a criminal jail. Now let's move on to section 418 that talks about execution of sentence of imprisonment. So it says that where the accused is sentenced to imprisonment for life or to imprisonment for a term in cases other than those provided for by section 413, the court passing the sentence shall forthwith forward a warrant to the jail or other place in which he is or is to be confined, and unless the accused is already confined in such jail or other place, shall forward him to such jail or other place with the warrant. So where the accused is sentenced to imprisonment for life, so he is serving an imprisonment for life, or to a term in cases other than those provided for by section 413, So in these cases, the court passing the sentence shall forthwith forward a warrant to the jail or other place where he either is confined or is to be confined. So a warrant to the jail will be sent, and unless the accused is already confined in such jail or other place, he shall be forwarded to such jail or other place with the warrant. Now, provided that where the accused is sentenced to imprisonment till the rising of the court, it shall not be necessary to prepare or forward a warrant to a jail, and the accused may be confined in such place as the court may direct. So, when the court is sentencing that person to imprisonment till the rising of the court, then for that short period of time, there will be no necessity to prepare or forward a warrant to a jail. It may be upon the direction of the court only. Now, where the accused is not present in court when he is sentenced to such imprisonment, as is mentioned in subsection 1, the court shall issue a warrant for his arrest for the purpose of forwarding him to the jail or other place in which he is to be confined, and in such case the sentence shall commence on the date of his arrest. So, when the accused is not present in the court while his sentence was pronounced, so in that case the court shall issue a warrant for his arrest and for the purpose of forwarding him to the jail or other place in which he is to be confined. And in that case, the sentence shall commence from the date and time of his arrest. Now, section 419 says that direction of warrant for execution. It says every warrant for the execution of a sentence of imprisonment shall be directed to the officer in charge of the jail or other place in which the prisoner is or is to be confined. So, that person who is in charge of the place where that person will be confined, that officer in charge will be always directed by a warrant. Now, section 420 says warrant with whom to be lodged. So, when the prisoner is to be confined in a jail, the warrant shall be lodged with the jailer. So, the jailer will be informed about the warrant. Now, section 421 says warrant for levy of fine. So, when an offender has been sentenced to pay a fine, the court passing the sentence may take action for the recovery of the fine in either or both of the following ways, while such fine shall be recovered from him. So, either he will be issued a warrant for the levy of the amount by attachment and sale of any movable property belonging to him, or a warrant may be issued to the collector of the district authorizing him to realize the amount as arrears of land revenue from the movable or immovable property or both of the defaulter. So, either of these two or both will be followed for the recovery of the fine. So, either a warrant will be issued that such person's property, that is a movable property, will be attached and sold. Okay, or he will be issued a warrant and that warrant will be forwarded to the collector of the district that you are hereby authorized to realize the amount from the arrears of the land revenue of the movable or immovable or both of the properties of the defaulter. Now, provided that if the sentence directs that in default of payment of the fine, the offender shall be imprisoned. So, where the direction of the order is such that if that person does not pay the fine, then he shall be imprisoned. In that case, and if such offender has undergone the whole of such imprisonment in default, then no court shall issue such warrant unless for special reasons to be recorded in writing, or it considers it necessary so to do, or unless it has made an order for the payment of expenses or compensation out of that fine under section 357. So, say for example, that person has been ordered to pay a fine and in default he will be imprisoned, and that person has undergone the whole of such imprisonment in default. That means he failed to pay the fine and now he has served the entire term of imprisonment that was directed in default of such payment of fine. Then after that, no court shall issue any such warrant unless there are special reasons that are to be recorded in writing, or the court considers necessary to do so, or unless it has been made by an order of payment of expenses or compensation that we have already read under section 357. Now the state government may make rules regulating the manner in which warrants under clause A of subsection 1 are to be executed. So the state government will be making the rules for regulation of that manner. And for the summary determination of any claims made by any person other than the offender in respect of any property attached in execution of such warrant. So what will be the method of recovery of such payment or executing the warrant or the determination of claims and the attachment of the property in execution of such warrant, all these procedures will be determined by the state government. Now where the court issues a warrant to the collector under clause B of subsection 1, the collector shall realize the amount in accordance with the law relating to recovery of arrears of land revenue. So it will be recovered as a arrear of land revenue as if such warrant were a certificate issued under such law, provided that no such warrant shall be executed by the arrest or detention in prison of the offender. Section 422 says that effect of such warrant will be that a warrant issued under clause A of subsection 1 of section 421 by any court may be executed within the local jurisdiction of such court, and it shall authorize the attachment and sale of any such property outside such jurisdiction when it is endorsed by the district magistrate within whose local jurisdiction such property is found. So we have already read in the CRPC that in order to attach any property that is outside the jurisdiction of a magistrate, he needs to endorse it by the district magistrate of the local jurisdiction, and after that only such property will be attached. Now section 423 says that warrant for levy of the fine issued by a court in any territory to which this court does not extend. So it says notwithstanding anything contained in this code or in any other law for the time being in force, when an offender has been sentenced to pay a fine by a criminal court in any territory to which this court does not extend, and the court passing the sentence issues a warrant to the collector of a district in the territories to which this code extends, authorizing him to realize the amount as if it were arrear of land revenue. So what happens is that when the person whose property is to be attached has that property in a different jurisdiction where this magistrate who is passing such order does not have any local authority or jurisdiction, then this magistrate will pass the order and send it to the collector of the district in whose territory the property is to be found, and in that case such warrant shall be deemed to be a warrant issued under clause B subsection 1 of section 421 by a court in the territories to which this code extends. So wherever this code extends, then it is okay, and the provisions of subsection 3 of the said section as to the execution of such warrant shall apply accordingly. So these provisions will be applicable to that. Now section 424 talks about suspension of execution of sentence of imprisonment. It says when an offender has been sentenced to fine only and to imprisonment in default of payment of the fine, and the fine is not paid forthwith. So when the offender is sentenced to fine only and he has made a default in that payment and an imprisonment is now imposed upon him, so the court may in this case order that the fine shall be payable either in full or before a date not more than 30 days from the date of the order. So it will be paid within 1 month of the order and it will be paid in full or in 2 or 3 installments, of which the first shall be payable on or before a date not more than 30 days. So when it is to be paid in installments, then the first installment should be paid within 30 days of the passing of such order, and after that the intervals will be set by the court through that order. Now the court may also suspend the execution of the sentence of imprisonment and release the offender on the execution by the offender of a bond with or without sureties as the court thinks fit, condition for his appearance before the court on the date on or before which payment of the fine or the installments thereof. So the court may also suspend the execution of the sentence of imprisonment and release the offender on the execution of the offender on the offender executing a bond before it. So if the offender has executed a bond before that magistrate, he will be released, and that bond will have the condition that he will appear before the court on such and such date as the court will think fit, and he will also pay the fine or the installments thereof as the case may be, and the amount of the fine or any installment thereof, if it is not realized on or before the latest date on which it is payable under the order, the court may direct the sentence of imprisonment to be carried into execution at once. So say for example the court released him on bail and he has fixed a bond that I will come within 30 days and submit the first installment of fine, and he does not do so. Then the court, on being default on the very first day of installment, the court will cancel that bond and will execute the sentence of imprisonment and take him into custody. Now the provisions of subsection 1 shall be applicable also in any case in which an order for the payment of money has been made on non-recovery of which imprisonment may be awarded and the money is not paid forthwith. So the provisions of subsection 1 shall be applicable also in those cases where the order of the payment of money has been made on non-recovery of which imprisonment may be awarded, okay, and the money is not paid forthwith. So where it is made on the non-recovery and it is not paid, then in that case also the provisions of subsection 1 will be applicable, and if the person against whom the order has been made on being required to enter into a bond such as is referred to in subsection fails to do so, then the court may at once pass sentence of imprisonment. So in that case also, if the person has failed to comply with the bond that he has executed before such magistrate, that I will come on such and such date and I will pay the installments or the entire fine, whatever may be, and he fails to do so, then the court may also in that case pass the sentence of imprisonment, just like as we have read in subsection 1. Now section 425 talks about who may issue warrant. It says every warrant for the execution of a sentence may be issued either by the judge or magistrate who passed the sentence or by his successor in office. Now section 426 says that sentence on escaped convict when to take effect. So when a sentence of death, imprisonment for life or fine is passed under this code on an escaped convict, so the convict has escaped. Now a sentence of death or imprisonment for life or fine is pending upon such escaped convict. In that case, such sentence shall, subject to the provisions herein before contained, take effect immediately. When a sentence of imprisonment for a term is passed under this code on an escaped convict, then if such sentence is severer in kind than the sentence which such convict was undergoing when he escaped, so the person was serving a sentence and thereafter he escaped from that prison. Now he was serving a particular kind of imprisonment. Now if the sentence that is to be next passed upon him is severer in kind than that sentence which he was already serving, then the new sentence shall take effect immediately. And if such sentence is not severer in kind than the sentence which he was already undergoing, then the new sentence shall take effect after he has suffered imprisonment for a further period equal to that which at the time of his escape remained unexpired of his former sentence. So he will be taken back into custody and he will be made to serve the rest of his former sentence, and after that he will serve the new sentence. This will happen if the newer sentence is not severer in kind than the older sentence. If it is severer in kind than the older sentence, then it will take immediate effect. Now, subsection 3 says that for the purposes of subsection 2, a sentence of rigorous imprisonment shall be deemed to be severer in kind than a sentence of simple imprisonment. Now, section 427 says that sentence of offender already sentenced for another offense. So, when a person already undergoing a sentence of imprisonment is sentenced on a subsequent conviction to imprisonment or imprisonment for life, such imprisonment or imprisonment for life shall commence at the expiration of the imprisonment to which he has been previously sentenced. So, when the person is already undergoing a sentence of imprisonment and thereafter he is subsequently convicted to imprisonment or imprisonment for life, then he will first be made to serve the previous imprisonment and then only the subsequent imprisonment will come into effect, unless the court directs that the subsequent sentence shall run concurrently with such previous sentence. So it is the discretionary power of the court whether to make the offender serve the sentences one after another or whether to run both the sentences concurrently. Now, provided that where a person who has been sentenced to imprisonment by an order under section 122 in default of furnishing security, then whilst undergoing such sentence, he will also be sentenced to imprisonment for an offence committed prior to the making of such order. The latter sentence shall commence immediately. So, the proviso says that where the person who has been sentenced to imprisonment by an order under section 122, which is for default of furnishing security, then while he is undergoing such sentence, he will be sentenced to imprisonment for an offence committed prior to the making of such order, and the latter sentence shall commence immediately. And when a person already undergoing a sentence of imprisonment for life is sentenced on a subsequent conviction to imprisonment for a term of imprisonment for life, the subsequent sentence shall run concurrently with such previous sentence. So when the person is already under a sentence of imprisonment for life and he is again convicted for a term of imprisonment for life, then both the sentences will run concurrently. Now, section 428 says that period of detention undergone by the accused to be set off against the sentence of imprisonment. So, where an accused person has on conviction been sentenced to imprisonment for a term not being imprisonment in default of payment of fine. So, we must understand that this section does not apply for imprisonment in default of payment of fine. That is excluded. Now, when the accused person has on conviction been sentenced to imprisonment for a term, period of detention, if any, undergone by him, so that period of time that he has already undergone during the investigation, inquiry or trial of the same case and before the date of such conviction shall be set off against the term of imprisonment imposed on him on such conviction. Say for example, he is imprisoned for 3 years. Now he has already served 6 months of imprisonment during the trial. So that part will be excluded. It will be set off. And the rest of the 2.5 years will be left for him to be served. Now, the liability of such person to undergo imprisonment on such conviction shall be restricted to the remainder, if any, of the term of imprisonment imposed on him. Now, provided that in case referred to in section 433A, such period of detention shall be set off against the period of 14 years referred to in that section. So we will read about it when we reach 433A. Now let's move on to section 429 that talks about savings. It says nothing in section 426 or section 427 shall be held to excuse any person from any part of the punishment to which he is liable upon his former or subsequent conviction. So former or subsequent convictions are not included as per section 428. Section 428 only talks about the ongoing, the present conviction. So when an award of imprisonment in default of payment of a fine is annexed to a substantive sentence of imprisonment and the person undergoing the sentence is after its execution to undergo a further substantive sentence or further substantive sentences of imprisonment, effect shall not be given to the award of imprisonment in default of payment of the fine until the person has undergone the further sentence or sentences. So the term that is to be served for in default of fine will be the last term that he will be serving. Before that, he will be serving the substantive portions of his sentence, and during serving that substantive portion of his sentence, if he is found to undergo a further sentence, then that will come into effect prior to that of the payment of fine, to that part of imprisonment that was inflicted on him on default of payment of fine. Now section 430 talks about a return of warrant on execution of sentence. It says when a sentence has been fully executed, the officer executing it shall return the warrant to the court from which it is issued, with an endorsement under his hand certifying the manner in which the sentence has been executed. So he will be returning the warrant to the court from which it came. That officer in charge of the jail, he will be certifying the manner in which the sentence was served by the offender. Now section 431 talks about money ordered to be paid recoverable as a fine. So any money other than a fine payable by virtue of any order made under this code, and the method of recovery of such money which is not otherwise expressly provided for shall be recoverable as if it was a fine. So when there is no method written for the recovery of any amount of money that is to be paid by any person as per the order of the court, it will be recovered as if it was a fine. Now provided that section 421 shall in its application to an order under section 359 by virtue of this section be construed as if the proviso to subsection 1 of section 421, after the words and figures under section 357, the words and figures or an order of payment of cost under section 359 has been inserted. So proviso says that section 421 shall be construed in the following manner in its application to an order under section 359. It will be read as if section 421 subsection 1 is having the words and figures or an order for payment of cost under section 359 has been inserted after the phrase under section 357. So this latter phrase will be added after this prior phrase, and it will be read as under section 357 or an order for payment of costs under section 359. This will be the entire phrase that is to be read in section 421. Now let's move on to section 432. It says power to suspend or remit sentences. It says when any person has been sentenced to punishment for an offence, the appropriate government may at any time without conditions or upon any conditions which the person sentenced accepts, suspend the execution of his sentence or remit the whole or any part of the sentence to which he has been sentenced. So it is the power of the government, the concerned government, that it may with or without conditions suspend the execution of the sentence or remit the whole or part of the sentence that is to be served by the offender. Now, whenever an application is made to the appropriate government for the suspension or remission of a sentence, the appropriate government may require the presiding judge of the court before whom the conviction was confirmed to state his opinions as to whether the application should be granted or refused. So, whenever the government is approached by the offender that please remove this sentence or please remit it or suspend it, then the government will confirm the opinion of the judge or magistrate or court who has passed such order. So the government will take the opinion of the presiding judge who has passed such order, that whether this application should be entertained or not. And when the reasons of such opinion is received by the government along with a certified copy of the statement of such opinion, and the reasons for such opinion shall also be forwarded. With the statement of such opinion, a certified copy of the record of the trial or the case thereof as exists will also be forwarded to the government. Now, if any condition on which a sentence has been suspended or remitted is, in the opinion of the appropriate government, not fulfilled, the appropriate government may cancel the suspension or remission, and thereupon the person in whose favor the sentence has been suspended or remitted, if at large, be arrested by any police officer without warrant and remanded to undergo the unexpired portion of the sentence. So, say for example, that application is rejected by the government, and if that person is at large, that means he is not confined in a place, he is on bail or on bond or whatever may be the condition, then irrespective of such condition of that accused, he will be taken into custody, he will be arrested by the police officer, that may be any police officer, and the arrest will be without warrant, and after that he will be remanded to undergo the unexpired portion of his sentence, that portion that he has not served. The condition on which a sentence is suspended or remitted under this section may be one, to be fulfilled by the person in whose favor the sentence is suspended or remitted, or one, independent of his will. So the condition on which the sentence that is to be served, the conditions will be in the person's favor who is going to serve that sentence, or it may be independent of his will. The appropriate government may, by general rules or special orders, give directions as to the suspension of sentence and the conditions on which petitions should be presented and dealt with. So it will be the government who will be regulating the rules and special orders, and the government will be giving directions as to what will be the mode of suspension of sentence or the conditions that are to be fulfilled to present a petition before the government under this section. So it will be regulated by the government. Now, provided that in the case of any sentence other than a sentence of fine passed on a male person above the age of 18 years, so if the sentence is passed upon a major male, then no such petition by the person sentenced or by any other person on his behalf shall be entertained unless the person sentenced in jail, and where such petition is made by the person sentenced, it is presented through the officer in charge of the jail, or where such petition is made by any other person, it contains a declaration that the person sentenced is in jail. As long as he is in jail, and either he is certifying that he is in jail through any other person, or he is presenting that application through the jailer, that means the officer in charge of the jail, then only his application will be entertained, otherwise not. Now, the provisions of the above subsections shall also apply to any order passed by a criminal court under any section of this code or any other law which restricts the liberty of any person or imposes any liability upon him or his property. So, the provisions of the above mentioned subsections will also apply to any order that is passed by a criminal court under this law or other law, and which restricts the liberty of any person or imposes any liability upon him or his property. Now, in this section and in section 433, the expression appropriate government means in cases where the sentence is for an offence against or referred under subsection 6 is passed under any law relating to a matter to which the executive power of the union extends, then it will be the central government, and in other cases the government of the state. So generally the government, as we know, it is either the central government or the state government. Let's move on to section 433. It talks about power to commute sentence. The appropriate government may, without the consent of the person sentenced, commute a sentence of death for any other punishment provided by the Indian Penal Code. So it has the power, the appropriate government has the power to commute a sentence, that is a death sentence, to any other punishment, a sentence of imprisonment for life, for imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years, or a fine. So an imprisonment for life may also be commuted to 14 years, a sentence of rigorous imprisonment for simple imprisonment for any term to which that person might have been sentenced, or for fine. So rigorous imprisonment may also be commuted to simple imprisonment, and a sentence of simple imprisonment for fine. So a simple imprisonment may also be commuted to fine. Now section 433A talks about restrictions on powers of remission or commutation in certain cases. So notwithstanding anything contained in section 432, where a sentence of imprisonment for life is imposed on conviction of a person for an offence for which death is one of the punishments provided by law, or where a sentence of death imposed on a person has been commuted under section 433 into one of imprisonment for life, such person shall not be released from prison until he had served for at least 14 years of imprisonment. So whenever the punishment that was inflicted upon such person was death, or the offense that he had committed is punished by a several kind of punishment, among which death is one kind. So whenever death sentence is one kind of punishment that is involved in such offense that this person has committed and against which he is to be serving a punishment, then in that case where death is involved, the remission or commutation in such case from life imprisonment to any other kind of imprisonment, in that case such person shall not be released from prison unless he has at least served 14 years of imprisonment. Now section 434 talks about concurrent power of central government in case of death sentences. It says the power conferred by section 432 and 433 upon the state government may, in case of sentence of death, also be exercised by the central government. So where it is a case of death sentence, then the powers that are exercised by state government will also be exercised by central government. Now section 435 says that state government to act after consultation with central government in certain cases. It says that the powers conferred by sections 432 and 433 upon the state government to remit or commute a sentence in any case where the sentence for an offence is which was investigated by the Delhi Special Police Establishment under their act, or by any other agency empowered to make investigation into an offence under any central act, or which involved the misappropriation or destruction of or damage to any property belonging to the central government, or which was committed by a person in the service of the central government while acting or purporting to act in the discharge of his official duty, then in all of these cases it shall not be exercised by the state government except after the consultation with the central government. So in all these cases, these three cases, so the state government will be taking permission of the central government before exercising the power of remitting or commuting a sentence. And subsection 2 says that no order of suspension, remission or commutation of sentence passed by the state government in relation to a person who has been convicted of offences, some of which relate to matters to which the executive power of the union extends, and who has been sentenced to separate terms of imprisonment which are to run concurrently. Basically this subsection says that there will be no order of suspension, remission or commutation of sentences that is to be passed by the state government in relation to a person who has been convicted of offences, some of which offences relates to matters to which the executive power of the union extends, and that convict has been sentenced to separate terms of imprisonments which are to run concurrently, and it shall have effect unless an order for the suspension, remission or commutation as the case may be has also been made by the central government in relation to the offences that is committed by such person with regard to matters to which the executive power of the union extends. So where the person is undergoing various sentences concurrently, and in that case the state government shall have no power to suspend, remit or commute any sentence unless the same has also been done by the central government in regard to those punishments that the central government is in power to remit, commute or suspend. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.